All right, well, for those of you guys who don't know, I'm more of an old mountain guy. But I'm not the, I think the topic was maybe a little bit about like, well, how are you making this happen? The never-ending quandary of a mountain guide. How is this supposed to work financially? And I am not going to talk about myself, because I feel like I have some better data. So I'm actually going to talk about Switzerland. And the reason why is because Switzerland is sort of, as far as guiding is concerned, sort of the land of milk and honey. Everything that people are talking about here that is not in order has been resolved in Switzerland. For example, that would be cool. Right? That would actually bring real value to a pin. There's another thing. You can't just call yourself a mountain guide. It's a protected profession. There's big magnetic peaks all over the place that people are traveling to from all over the world.
What's that?
There's 150 professionally run huts that make access a lot easier with gondolas. This is not to be underestimated. Mountain guides are part of like sort of like the entire tourist economy. People are used to hiring mountain guides. There's a big tradition of that. And I pay $250 a year to get a $10 million aggregate level insurance. Sounds pretty dreamy, right? So, and that's why, since this has all been resolved, now I want to show you guys what the reality is of a working mountain guide over there. So, this, by the way, is Alexander Volken, and he's one of like the most famous mountain guides of sort of like of the golden era. And they were by and large very poor people. And this is really important in the development, I think, of the whole guiding scene over there. Because the amount of money that they were making as poor mountain farmers was dwarfed by contrast of like the amount of money that they could make as mountain guides at the time. Climb the Matterhorn or guide the Matterhorn one time, you could buy a beautiful cow. If you didn't climb the Matterhorn and just farm all summer long, like a crazy person, maybe you could buy a cow. So it was like a very different, maybe liken it a little bit to sort of like this thing is like, yeah, I could be working here in Seattle, but if I go crab fishing, there could be like a huge payout. So that was sort of like part of the positioning. And then we just fast forwarded 150 years into now. And so this is like, it gets a little bit dorky, but I want to just sort of like confuse this conversation with like just facts. So these are the results of like a survey where they surveyed 1,200 IFMGA guides. So roughly 700 answered the survey. And this is what the reality actually is like for people who live in mountain guiding utopia. So at the top there, the first really alarming number is the 9.53%. You guys see that? Of the average mountain guide in Switzerland is now 52 years old. So of these respondents, of the 700 respondents, 48% are older than 56 years. And so forth. You guys see that? Right. The average experience level of all of these IFMGA guides is about 21 years. But so like this sort of like if you had to create a profile, like the person is 52 years old, received their diploma and in their early 30s, has 20 years of working experience. And what is noteworthy is that there are more guides retiring every year right now than there are young guides coming into the field. And that has to do with the fact, just like here, that there's about 100 different ways on how you can make more money than being a mountain guide. So then this right here, credits analysis, means like this is a cross analysis of like for the people who have 30 years of experience there at the bottom row, the majority of them, or 26% of them, are at the age of 56 or more. So they have like, because because we're not just competing as mountain guides. What kind of dawned on me there is we're not just competing with, well, are there permits, are there gondolas, are there huts? You're also competing with every other trade, because at some point a young person says, I really like mountain guiding, but I could also be in the tech field, or I could be in another field. And so like when just like there's I think a lot of good parallels, because Washington also has like an extremely diversified economy. So for a young person, there's like all kinds of different things that you could do instead of being a mountain guide. And these days, so this old crusty guy, Alexander Burgener, they knew nothing other than hard labor. It was either hard labor on a mountain farm or hard labor as a mountain guide. So then they would make, but if they're making 3 times as much money as a mountain guide, so they're going to go do that. But now Switzerland has a very diversified economy, a very high standard of education. So for like a lot of young people, there's options to make money more easily than with mountain guiding. And so like they are having like now a little bit of a problem to bring younger people into the field. So this is sort of what it looks like then. This pie chart right here. The question is, can you live well off of your guiding income? 45% of them say, no, it's just a side income. And those are all people who fully went through like the IFMGA certification, right? 26% say, no, it is my main income, but I supplement it with other income. So I work as a ski touring in the spring, and then high alpine guiding in the summer, but then maybe I work in a carpentry shop part of the time, whatever it is. And then there are, I forgot to put the percentage in there. 25% say yes, I can live well off of this. But those are people who are just, so you're just feeding yourself. And then over here, this graphic shows how many days people work as a mountain guide, and the average is 70 days. People who are working 150 days, it's like pretty small percentage.
Ian Nicholson.
No.
Oh no.
Ian Nicholson, the chart would be like.
That's black.
So then, and now I think it becomes sort of like interesting when you're looking at all of this right here, so like at the top there, yes, the income is sufficient to live on. When you're looking at it, it goes from 36%, 26%, 30%, 20, and then 18. And you can see, and then at the bottom where it says, no, mountain guiding is only a side income for me, it goes from 24% to 46, 41, 59, 63. So essentially what happens when you're young, you're like, I'm so strong, I can work 100 days in a row. And then over time, it flips, right? But even if you add up the people who are saying, well, no, while it is a main income, I supplement it with income from another occupation. If you take those two percentages, even the young people, like, so these are like sub 40 or 42, younger than 42, that's 65%. So that's 2/3 of the guild. They start out right away with some form of another income. And then if you then go into, at this point, I'm still in the second to last column, 2 more weeks. So then it would be 80, it remains sort of there. It's like 80% of more mature guys then have a supplementary. And then down here, this bottom right here, it just says, if you say, yes, the income is sufficient to live on, 19% say that of those who said that, they have to work more than 90 days a year. And so forth. Anyway, I hope this is, I mean, the nut of this slide is just that, like, as you age, maybe 70, I think it's, I didn't put that slide in, but 80% of those guys and women who have the IFMGA education also have another education, another job, or another something. Interestingly enough, like the German-speaking parts there, they have a bigger percentage of like more other labor jobs, like I'm a carpenter, I'm a plumber. And then the French-speaking part, they have like actually like a bigger percentage of higher education. So then what everybody wants to know, how much money are you making? That looks all really pretty good, right? I don't know. So the Swiss Guiding Association makes a suggestion saying this is a suggested, they cannot dictate what you're charging, but they make a suggestion of like, this is a day wage, a suggested day wage. Which at this point, I think, so this is 6 years old. I think it's like right around $600. Sorry, 600 Swiss francs. And then these ones right here in Sommerherbst, that's like high alpine ski touring this spring, winter and spring skiing or heli skiing. If you're employed for a guiding office on eine Werksteigerschule, right? So then the darker the color is, like then it goes like from like 0% to 75 and more percent. So for example, if you work for somebody else, then it was like $550. And if you work for yourself, generally was maybe a little was more. The majority was a little bit more. I hope that is helpful. So the other thing that is worth saying, that you know, like up there, those two bars right there, the lighter color is sort of like this proposed wage by the guiding service, and 80% of like the guides are saying, yeah, I'm fine with that wage. I'm just going to charge $600 a day. And then others say, well, if I'm supposed to guide, whatever, the northeast buttress of Slessie, there's a summit tariff for that. It's gonna be more expensive. Yeah. So
it's super high risk.
Oh, no, I did, yeah, I was totally agree. I was more deterred. I wasn't trying to downplay and charge more.
Yeah, then it's, yeah. You're right.
Yeah, totally just call it tariffs, won't be tariffs.
I know I shouldn't use the word tariff right now. Okay, so now,
Right, oh, you got it.
what do those wages mean? Right?
Yeah, okay.
The average guy earns around $600 when he or she is guiding.
Yeah. That's all.
The average guy works 70 days a year independently. And then produces about 10 days of administrative labor to produce that work. So you have to that they're obviously not getting paid for, so you have to take that into account. So they gross $42,000 a year. And that gets distributed over 80 days of work, and that comes to a day wage of $525. That's in buying power about $450. No, it's actually more, it's $600, but in terms of what you can then buy with that at the breadbasket in the store. So if you work 150 days per year and you spend about 25 days on admin, your average day wage is maybe slightly less or somewhere in the same number. So now, if you work 175 days a year, you have about 10 working weeks left for some other form of income. Well, that is a lot of work. And now, most guys who work that many days do not have a serious employment somewhere else. And you will be gone a lot, and your earnings are now in the appropriate zone, except for now you're starting other problems that you guys are all too familiar with.
So the point is, everybody just go crab fishing for a few years.
So people either leave the profession because risk to life and limb, difficult family life, or financial insecurity. And somewhere in there, you have to sort of wiggle yourself into a sustainable place. Is it possible? If you guide 150 days, that's a very dear friend of mine is doing that. I know Ian is shaking his head, yes. Yes, it's possible. But I mean, you gotta be creative and you have to have a lot of energy and you gotta hustle. So my friend who I talked to about this morning, he said he makes about $80,000 a year. Now the question is, as I said, can you feed a family in Switzerland off $80,000? And he's like, hell no, my wife is making roughly the same amount of money. And that's how it works. They have 2 kids. So cost of living is roughly the same as around here.
Martin, just for to make it a little more comparable, what is in Switzerland, are a lot of those guys also getting tips and gratuity or not so much? So
not nearly as much as here. Like not even close. Like here, I think the tipping culture in America is he mentioned how generous American clients are. Very, very generous by comparison to European clients. And it's in part because the waiting day wage was assumed to take care of that. So which model is more sustainable? Is it one or the other, a combo of the two, or shift from one or the other, or does it shift over time? So this here, I wanted to show you guys, Durchschnitt is average. So this is how much the average worker in Switzerland makes, right? That's about what, $6,700 a month.
Can you speak a little bit or help folks understand, how much time it takes for a Swiss guy to get ready for work, say like a 5-day overnight? And also how much time they would spend commuting to work? That kidding. So let's say the Monterosa Traverse, for example.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, the packing, for example, is a lot easier, right? But you have to contend with hut reservations, which are turning to be a lot more complicated, a little bit every year. And then the people that I do know that work as many days as Ian, they are driving a lot. They live in Grindelwald and guide in the Piedmont, and then they guide in Chamonix, and then they guide at home. So you have to be willing to drive and go get the work, you know, because you have maybe sort of most of those guys have like a sort of a smaller cadre. They work for themselves and have a smaller cadre of repeat clients. And as opposed to, let's say, the RMI Mountaineer model, where you have you guide always the same thing and have an enormous clientele. Here they have like a smaller clientele of maybe like 30, 40, 50 clients, and then go all over the place with these repeat clients. So you have to be willing to drive a lot. But I guess if you guide 70 days, right? So like, sorry, the Durchschnitt of 70, let's say $6,800. What does that come out to? 10, so 67,000, it's like 75, almost 80,000, right? So in order for you to be an average earner, you have to guide 150 days a year. And in order to guide 150 days a year, you probably will have to produce 25 days of admin work. That's a lot of guiding. And so the problem, I mean, it's possible, but you have to sort of then finesse it a little bit, I think, with family life and taking care of your body over time. And I think that's why, like, on average, there are more guides who guide less, but they actually stay in the profession just as long or longer because you're not, trashing yourself and you're not burning yourself out. There's always exceptions, but as that sort of like arc chart shows, there's 7% of the people who responded had like the stamina to produce that many days. So this is something that I sort of came up with like a little while ago. It's been sort of like floating around in my brain. There's an arc to the career in my mind. There's your athletic ability, that's the blue arc. It comes up pretty quickly, right? And then there's your technical savvy, the orange arc. And then there's your experience that sort of lags behind. And so I think my advice would be, I guess the reason why I showed you guys this thing of Switzerland is because even there in Utopia, it doesn't appear to be easy. Most people are very creative, have some form of other income, and then also this, maybe if you're here in your guiding career, maybe you work for RMI and you can like guide like 50 days in a row and carry 70-pound packs and do all that stuff because it's just hard labor and you're so strong and you're capable of doing that. You don't have a lot of experience yet. And then over time, your technical savvy, you gain some experience, your technical savvy goes up. And then all of a sudden you tell everybody how it's supposed to work. I call it like the era of post-juvenile arrogance. And then there's this zone right here where you're sort of like, a lot of you guys are in that sort of like the meat, you know, where it's prime time that you can maybe hold up, where you're still very, very strong, physically fit, nothing's broken. You have a lot of technical savvy, and you have like a pretty strong amount of experience at this point. At some point, you're crossing the threshold. You know, the number of years right here, this was just sort of like this could be 40 years for some, it could be 20 years for others. And then at some point, and I'm definitely not nearly as strong as I used to be. You know, I have to admit that to yourself sometimes, but that doesn't mean that you're not like valuable as a mountain guide anymore. You're maybe like what you're guiding will be different, and the sort of like the level of experience or what you can pass on to people will also be different. All of a sudden, what used to be a boring route for you, you become grateful for. It sort of changes over time. Not just the amount of guiding that you do, but also the type of guiding that you do. It changes over time, and you have to be willing to like see all that stuff. So I think it's a beautiful profession, because I think it's really honest and authentic. It's hard, but it's honest and authentic. And that's something that will always keep me motivated. I don't know one guy here or anywhere else who only makes money off of mountain guiding and feeds a family of 4.
Two. Yeah, two. In heaven.
So,
Sorry.
and just so you know, that was probably never any different. That's actually like the technical director. I talked to the technical director about this like a couple of years ago, and he's like, it was probably never meant to be that. You know, old guy, Alexander, he had another job. He was a mountain farmer. So, and he was not the only one working in that family. And so this is something that I would like to pass on to you guys. I think a lot of young guides sort of suffer from the notion that like, if you don't work like 300 days a year and you do something else, you're now not a real guide. I would say like, okay, well, if you're gonna guide like 10 days a year, at some point there's sort of like there's a sweet spot, you know. But just because you have another source of income doesn't mean that it's not a real profession. That's just my opinion. And this is something that we have to just be aware. We are the salt in the soup of people's memory bank. We create screensavers, but we are not essential. Imagine the all of a sudden all the mountain guides in Washington vanish. You know what's going to happen to this state? Nothing. Imagine all the plumbers vanish. It would be like within a week, a venerable shit show. So we just have to sort of, you know, and this is then sort of like, it will lead to like another conversation about the Washington State Mountain Guiding Association. Sort of like I think we haven't done a good job either of making ourselves relevant to sort of like the whole construct of outdoor recreation in Washington State. And there's an arc with this career. And so with that, and with that arc in mind, just be sure to diversify your skills. The end.
Nice job.
Yeah.